ask.
What program are you using?
Anchor is the platform that I'm using to publish the podcast on. And so, I'm doing all the editing, of course, on a Mac. So iMovie and GarageBand.
Oh, okay. I used a program to edit all the interviews for Of Relation. And it was, I can't remember what program it was, but it was a separate program that I borrowed from a friend.
Okay.
And I'm curious about other programs like iMovie or GarageBand, if they're like user friendly and easy.
For a guy who knows next to nothing and is learning along the way, it's been like super easy. And if I needed to learn something really fast, like YouTube,
that's
easy.
Good to know.
Like, super easy. And I just want to double check that. Okay, I might need to go wireless eventually, because that's the other thing. Like, you suddenly you just forget that you're like attached to something, you know. And
that's like the story of my life. Forget I'm attached to something, then it all crumbles down.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's true.
I shouldn't have moved.
So, you know what? Ooh. I was supposed to bring a printout of what you sent me, and I didn't bring it.
I have it.
Do you have it?
The short one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have it.
You know what? But okay, so tell me why the short one.
I don't know. I like the short one because it's more simple.
Okay.
And I feel like the longer one is like what I would use for like work or publication or like an event in which I'm trying to like sell myself.
Sure.
And it makes me feel weird.
Okay.
It feels like marketing.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And less like personal.
Right.
I don't feel like I'm marketing myself here.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, let's read the short one. Okay, so.
I mean, you could put the last part that's in the long one about, I believe, what do I say on the last one? Something about everybody's, she lives by the belief that each person has the power to positively impact the world. We can add that to the end of this one.
Okay. Did you just read that?
Yeah, I can write it down. It's in the text message above.
It's in the text, got it.
Yeah, the bottom part of the text above yours. Above that one.
So, Enzina Marrari is a conceptual, visual, and performance artist. She's influenced by her surrounding environment, the stories of her peers, and the confrontation of the hard stuff. I love that part, the confrontation of the hard stuff. What does that confrontation mean to you?
I think it means addressing it and facing it and saying it out loud and being willing to, as an individual, investigate what that means for you. And as a community, being able to discuss and face and talk about it. And hard stuff can be anything, you know, it can be significant trauma. It could be trying to verbalize why your day was so bad. It can be the cycle of failed communication with someone that you're involved with in any capacity.
Sure. The hard stuff.
The hard stuff.
The stuff we all go through every single day and may not be discussing.
Yeah, often aren't discussing.
Often are not discussing, yeah.
I think we leave so much unsaid, even to ourselves, and that just creates so many issues as we move through the world and move through trying to communicate with other humans. Like, you'd think we're all the same species. Like, it should be easier.
Right.
But it's so difficult.
It is difficult.
Especially when we leave it all unsaid.
Yeah.
And I think there's a time for that. There's a time to leave it so that you can move through it, right? That's protection, right?
Okay.
Especially with trauma.
Right.
Like, we have to kind of just protect ourselves so we can make it through whatever it is.
Right.
But at some point, if you don't identify it and address it, it just becomes weight.
It sure does.
I think, anyway.
Yeah. It becomes weight. You already have my wheels turning in so many different directions that I probably should pull this out so I can write down my thoughts and try to address them one at a time. So tell us about your artwork. What do you do exactly?
I hate that question.
If it isn't
Do you know
exactly, you hate that
I
question?
hate that question, yeah. Because I wish I could say, I'm a painter. Like, have it be like simple. But I guess I would say, I would define myself as a multi-disciplinary or multimedia artist.
Okay.
And for me, I guess the conceptual part is that the idea or the concept usually comes first and is the most important part of the process. So I think less, initially about the aesthetics of something or what something looks like or what colors balance better. I think more about what is the story I'm trying to tell, what is the concept, what is the idea, what is the emotion, what is the feeling.
Right.
And for me, what follows is how do I express that? And I might express that in a painting or a mixed media piece where I'm taking elements of different disciplines like drawing and painting and sculpture and fiber and putting it all together in like an actual piece of artwork. Okay. Or it might be a performance that either I'm doing or I'm directing and collaborating with other artists to do. Or it might be a wearable art piece or a sculpture or audio or whatever medium best express the concept for me. Okay.
And how do you determine that? Or is it just a part of the feeling as well?
I think it's a part of the feeling. Okay. And I think it also, as I think many artists do, I work in series. Okay. So I'll get an idea or a concept and I'll kind of get stuck on that and then make several pieces related to that.
Gotcha.
And I think depending on what I'm trying to express, it comes out in different ways. Right. For instance, I did a series of work where I was really thinking about text and the connection between our physical being, like our body, and our emotional being, our mental, behavioral selves. And so I did I did a series of work using anatomy text, like vintage anatomy text, that was specifically talking about the body functions and trauma to the body, but using that in a way to bring connection to our physical and emotional states. And so identifying words within the text that related to emotional experiences and behavioral experiences that were really designed to talk about our physical capacities. Okay. And so that I felt that concept was more appropriate to express using the actual text and using words and metaphor through images that could relate to that. Whereas using performance, it wouldn't make sense in my brain to say, I want to draw a connection to this using text in a performative way. Okay. I guess it could develop into that, but in a tactile way and in a visual way and in a conceptual way, I was just drawn more to that medium. Okay. And I think that's interesting to think about too. And I've talked to students about this. I was a professor of art for many years. Will still probably be at some point. And in thinking about like, why do you do the art that you do? I also think about why is it important to tell this story in this particular medium? Because I think that relates to the strength of the finished product and the outcome. Like why is photography the best way to tell this story versus making a sculpture? And I feel like if you can't answer that or if you can't identify that, there's still room for you to grow into. Okay. Yeah. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it does.
Yeah.
How did you, or when did you, how and when did you realize that you were an artist?
To took me a really, really long time to like self-identify as an artist. You know, for the longest time, I thought I make art sometimes.
Okay.
And I don't know if that was insecurity or ego or, you know, thinking like I sound like I'm full of BS if I say I'm an artist, you know. And I remember being in art school, and my mentor was Hugh McPeck. He was a sculptor and a draftsman, a really skilled illustrator, and such a mentor and inspiration for me. And he would always ask in his classes, raise your hand if you're an artist.
Okay.
And I would never raise my hand. And he would ask us to think about that.
Okay.
What makes you feel, to the students who did raise their hands, what makes you feel like at this point in your career, you're identifying yourself as an artist? And why aren't you an artist? You're here, this is your practice. Why are you resisting calling yourself that? And I think even after that, it took me a while to feel comfortable saying I'm an artist. But I made art since I was a kid. You know, I remember lying in my bed drawing the things in my bedroom at a young age. And I was always kind of performative and interested in expression in some capacity. You know, but interestingly, my main medium when I was younger was creative writing and poetry.
Okay. Wow.
And that is what I intended to pursue in like an academic way. And my first year in college, I was going to do poetry. I was going to do literary art. I was going to have art be my minor, not be my focus. I didn't feel like I was strong enough as an artist. I felt like I was stronger as a writer. And I remember taking these beginning art classes in college while I was focusing on you know, emphasizing poetry. And I had this professor I had a couple professors who were really encouraging. And I remember feeling lost and didn't know what I was going to do with myself, and I didn't think I could really do anything, you know, felt kind of like I was floundering. And after one class, a professor was looking at a piece I did, which was a drawing, and she said, well, I think we found what you can do. And that just sit with me, you know? And even after that, I didn't think I could do it. And I, you know, transferred to University of Alaska Anchorage and was still intending on doing poetry, but I couldn't major in poetry at UAA. It was only a minor available. And so I thought, okay, well, I guess I'll major in art.
I guess.
Minor in poetry.
That's what's available.
And for the longest time, I was like, well, I'll do an interdisciplinary. You know, I'll mix it, because I just didn't feel confident or strong enough to focus specifically on art. And I think that shift, that kind of unintentional shift, right, of being kind of forced to do this thing I didn't feel secure about at all, really changed the trajectory of my life and my career in art making.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's
and I can't say exactly like when the shift happened that I was like, okay, I can own this. You know, I can say that I'm an artist and feel good about that and feel like that's authentic and not forced or ego or I don't know when that happened, but
that's cool.
Somewhere.
Somewhere along the journey.
And it wasn't like I got my degree and then I was like, oh, I'm an artist. You know, I'd shown work. I don't know when it happened.
There just is a point where you begin to own what you're up to.
And I think people started identifying me as that or introduced me as that. And, you know, at first I'd say, oh, no, I just make art sometimes. you know? But then at some point I was just like, okay. Yeah.
This is who I am.
And then I started to believe it, you know? Very
cool. So Is there any part of you now that kind of looks back in time at the young girl who was sitting in her room, painting her room or drawing her room, and like you feel like a unity to that, or since your journey kind of took you away from that for a bit and you were more into the writing, and now I think I'm hearing that the writing's not as strong, perhaps.
It's not as strong, but it's making a comeback.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like that's a part that I want to focus more on.
Okay.
But the question about whether or not I feel unity with my kind of younger self, I don't know.
What does that even mean?
What does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean?
You know, so in my experience as a musician, who I would have never said I'm a singer.
Yeah.
I had a strong interest in the upright bass because I wanted to play the bass guitar. And my dad was like, well, the best way to get training is you need to learn the upright bass. And I was on board. I was like, great, let's do this, you know. So, and it took years and years for me to remember that when I was in 2nd and 3rd grade, I would spend hours in my bedroom singing along to an a cappella cassette tape.
Yeah.
And like I just thrived in that and had so much fun with that, and I could hear all the parts that were there. And at that age I was trying to sing all of the parts that were in there, even the bass parts that I wasn't even close to hitting, you know. And so it took a lot of growing up and just enduring the journey to realize, wait, like my first passion in music was singing.
Interesting.
And
yeah.
And now I feel a unity to that.
Yeah,
like, I remember that little boy in the room.
Yeah.
And I have a kind of a childlikeness with it now, where like this is part of me. This is,
Yeah. I don't know. I think because I've been doing art for so long, I've never really thought about that. You know, I recognize that I had done it when I was younger, and it was always kind of a mix, and I was always kind of dabbling in different ways of expression, like creative expression. But feeling a unity, I don't know.
That's a strong word too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if
I think I do connect to a sense of playfulness in life, and a sense of childlike joy in a lot of the ways that I express myself outside of art. Interestingly, art for me is mostly like serious and hard. Like, it's not fun, you know. People are like, oh, you're an artist, it must be fun. I'm like, no, it's painful. And I think outside of that, you know, I really revel in being silly and having silly experiences. And I think that's kind of what I connect to more from my youth, because my youth was not silly and it was not playful. And so I think I've, as an adult, tried to regain that, to create that connection with my younger self and my younger, you know, the parts that were missing, I think, for me.
Interesting.
Yeah. But the art, I mean, I've done like a couple silly performances, one silly performance, but most of my work is, it's about struggle.
It's about struggle.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I really do just love it. I don't think there's enough of it in our world.
Yeah.
Because what I see that there's an overabundance of is entertainment.
Yeah.
And we need to find rest with entertainment at times. But I feel like there's something missing for us culturally about who we could become when we own the baggage and we own the difficult things that are happening in our world, and the way we can connect with each other in ways that actually matter. You know? Versus, oh, you're on that team too? Okay, great. Let's be pals. Like, it's just like right here at the surface.
It's at the surface.
And the depth is totally missing.
Absolutely.
That glues us together. You know?
And I think, you know, you speaking of connection, the other thing that drives my work a lot, in addition to kind of the struggle, is also the joy in connection and what that looks like for me and what that looks like for other people.
Right.
So I don't think it's all dark, my work, but it is about the hard stuff, and it's about the connection.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something about the dark stuff that helps us make more sense of the light stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like, it's like you can't really have one without the other.
Right.
And if you're too much in one or the other, you're missing out on the whole experience.
And I feel like when we're vulnerable with each other, when we tell each other our stories and our experiences, we connect because we can say out loud, or we can say to ourselves, oh, it's not just me. I'm not alone. I felt that too. Or we can say to another person, I understand.
For sure.
I know what you mean.
Right.
I've been there.
Right.
And hearing someone else that can understand and empathize with what your experience has been, or who's just able to be there, I think makes us feel less alone.
Right. Definitely.
You know, I think I was talking with a friend the other day. I've made so many great friendships out of working on art with people. And I feel like, and you know, a lot of the work that I've done involving other people is very physical. I'm either making something that they're wearing on their body, or we're working together to create movement based on concepts. And so it's very physical, it's very in your body. There's a lot of physical touch that happens. And I've created such great bonds with people through that there's something about it that's totally disarming, and you allow yourself to be raw and vulnerable and open. And I feel like when we do that, we just connect with each other on this deep level that's not surface, right? We get like cut through all the BS, and we're able to express the things that we're ashamed of.
Sure.
And when we release those, we release a little bit of the shame, because part of that shame is I'm a bad person, or I'm not worthy, I'm a worthless person, or I did a bad thing and then I'm a bad person. And when we give some of that up and we share that with someone, I think we release a little bit of the burden of that.
For sure. Yeah, there's something very human about those burdens and how dark that struggle can be.
Oh yeah.
And I, for one, know I had not truly lived until I truly investigated those dark parts of myself.
Yeah.
And to know that I am, and out of that journey, there came transformation, which led me to own both things, and that is how dark and fragile that I can be, and how loving and just amazing I can be.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really grasp that wonderful light about me without first really grasping the dark of me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of you, right? We don't want to focus on those parts because they're hard and they hurt.
They are hard.
They're hard, but they're such a part of you. And I don't know, I go back and forth with, this idea that, I am who I am because of all my experiences, right? Like that cliche thing. But really, I mean, what are we if not a sum of all of our experiences, good
Right.
and bad. And how wonderful would it be if all of our experiences were great,
Right.
you know? But that's
Right.
just not
That's
the
not the
case.
story.
That's
Yeah.
not the story for anyone.
And you know, there's not one ancient or archetypical story where that's ever the case.
Right.
It's always struggle.
It's
It's
always
always
struggle.
adversity.
Right.
It's always, why did that person do that?
Right.
You know, and the consequences that
Right.
come after.
And that's such an interesting point you bring up too. Why did that person do that? Because I think when we're able to understand each other and empathize with each other and learn more about the background, we can have more compassion for why someone
sure.
does something they do.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean we can, you know, it's okay, like bad behavior is okay or
Right.
hurtful behavior is okay.
Mm-hmm.
But when we're able to step back a little bit and say, that wasn't okay, but I understand
Right.
why you would have done that,
Yep. Yep.
and be able to have compassion.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a goal, right? I mean, I
Right.
think that's a goal for me, is to work on being able to treat people with more compassion, recognizing that there's always more to
Right.
everybody's story that
Right.
we're let in on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems to me that the amount of, and again, this is just part of the journey and the transformation, right? I once judged myself harshly in the realm of my darkness.
Oh,
and
yeah.
so when I look at the world, I'm judging the world harshly about
Yeah.
its darkness. But the more I came to understand myself
Mm-hmm.
and why I made the decisions I made, or why and how certain experiences affected me
Yeah.
negatively the way they did,
Yeah.
I began to better understand me, better
Mm-hmm.
accept me, better love me, better just sit with me,
Yeah.
which then allows me to better sit and understand you and the world and go, okay, like there are reasons behind the reasons, and I don't know everyone's story,
Yes.
but we're all in this together.
Yes.
And judgment cannot be part of the conversation because it doesn't bring any healing.
It doesn't, but it's also natural. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's something we need to check ourselves on, but I think it's unrealistic to say we're not going to pass judgment,
Okay.
because we do. Every day we judge. And I think it's human nature to judge. But I think if we determine how we act based on that judgment, I think that's when we mess up.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think if we
that
can
makes
check
sense.
ourselves and say, oh, where's this judgment coming from? Is
Right.
this fair?
Right.
I think that's the work.
Yeah, that is the work. How would you describe, if you have more to say about it, painting the art? Is there something that's more personal to you about how you process your artwork?
It's all personal.
Okay.
It's all personal.
Yeah.
And I feel like for me, it starts in a personal place, and then through the recognition that what we experience on a personal level is shared, right? Because I think it starts with, for me, what is this issue? What is this thought? What is this emotion? Then also recognizing that it's not just my own experience. It's a shared experience. You know, like, I think was it Audre Lorde who said the personal is political?
Okay.
Like,
yeah.
I think that's true in many ways. I think it's political. I think it's social. I think what we
Right.
experience on a personal level that makes us feel isolated is actually a shared experience. It's something we're all experiencing as a community, as social beings.
Right.
And so even if it starts in a personal space with something that I've experienced that has caused me pain or hurt or trauma, being able to create a way of releasing that socially makes me understand that it's not just me, and that I'm not isolated, and that
Right.
I'm not alone, that this is something that everyone has experienced in some capacity or can understand because of similar experiences in their life.
Right.
And I think the work that I do that specifically is around kind of a personal, hard experience. It's very therapeutic. You know, like I work through my stuff. I work it out.
Right.
Through my art making.
I totally get it.
You know,
and work it out.
And that's a really selfish thing, right? It's very self-centered.
Right.
To say, oh, I have this pain, or I have this experience, or this thing happened to me, and I'm going to really dissect it and work on it, and then I'm going to put it out to the world so that they can see. Like, that's pretty self-centered. But I also think in offering it up, it allows other people to say, oh, I'm not alone.
Right.
Oh, someone else has experienced this. You know, I think I have this memory of when I was young. You know, my mom was an alcoholic, and it was very secretive, and we didn't talk about it. And I felt like I was the only kid who had a parent that was an alcoholic, and I felt so alone, and I felt so isolated. And I remember hearing about another, you know, a student, a friend of mine, whose parent just got arrested for a DUI.
No.
And I thought, you know, one, how sad, but also it's not just me.
Right.
I'm not the only one in the world experiencing this. And even though I never talked about it with this person or addressed it, just knowing that there was someone else out there who possibly understood made me feel connected to something bigger and made my world a little less closed. And I think that feeling really resonates in the kind of personal part of art making for me, because if I could offer that up for someone else to say, oh, I get it. And it's not just me who's felt this way. It's not just me who's experienced this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because those things isolate us. They're the things we're ashamed of. We don't want to talk about them.
Right.
We don't want to say it out loud because then it makes it real. And then it just makes us alone in that.
It sure does. Yeah.
So if we let it go a little bit, it makes us less alone, but it makes other people less alone too. At least that's my hope.
I like that. I like how you used a few words: self-centered, selfish, and then what was the third one that I heard? Actually, maybe the third one was my own. It was courage.
Oh.
Like, out of the self-centeredness can come across, you know, or the phrase self-centered can come across in a negative light, as well as selfish, strongly negative, right? Yeah. But self-centered itself, just that phrase itself, doesn't have to be taken as if that's a negative thing, because, well, there's kind of a new idea of self-centered that might be self-care. Yeah. And I'm wondering culturally what that's actually meaning for people, because I'm not sure that it's on the same playing field as what we're discussing. Right. Self-care is like, oh, I'm going to go maybe get my nails done or something. Yeah. Like that version of self-care.
But that's self-care too, right?
It's self-care too. Yeah. Maybe if getting your nails done is your way of processing your emotions, then we are talking about the same thing, I guess.
Or like sometimes people have a hard time connecting with others, and human touch, even if it's getting your nails done, I think sometimes that's taking care of yourself. Oh, yeah. Or allowing yourself to be pampered. That's self-care too. It's just a different kind of self-care. It's less investigative, for sure. Right. But you're connecting with another person, and you're spending some time on taking care of yourself in maybe a superficial way, but also in a way that allows you to... It's something. It's still valuable. It's still valuable. Right. Yeah.
self-centered. More thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, when you think about like the act of art making, there is not a genre, but there's a group of artists that make art because they have an intense passion and desire to create and make art, and it's driven by something outside of themselves, right? These are outsider artists or visionary artists that often don't have any type of training or background, and they're just, something is telling them that they must create, and so they do this feverishly without any intention of ever showing their work, right? Often these people are discovered sometimes after they've died, and you just find like thousands and thousands of pieces of work, and then they're put on display, right? Because we need to see the brilliance of these people. But the other side of art that is the majority of art are artists that are making stuff and then putting it on a wall for everyone to see. It's
right.
Like if you're looking at that just from the surface, it could be perceived as like, what big egos do these people have that they're making this stuff that they think is great, and then they want to put it up on walls so everybody else can look at it and think it's great.
Right.
And I don't think that's the case, but I think that it could be interpreted that way from other folks. I think for me, when I'm looking at art and when I'm presenting art, I think the ability that art has to really make you feel it, that gives you a sense of physical reaction. I mean, I think that's the strongest work. And it never crosses my mind that I'm like, oh, this artist must think he's great, that, or she's great, that they're showing this work. They're putting this out there and they're presenting this. And I think for me, it's just a different way of communicating. It's like a different language.
Sure.
It's a language that doesn't need words, or that goes beyond words.
Right.
And really captures the things that we don't have enough words in our languages to speak.
I like that. I like the way you say that. That's great.
I mean, I think when I look at the work that resonates with me the most is work that I see and I have a strong emotional or physical reaction to. I'm not a dancer. I wish I could be a dancer. Maybe sometime I'll be a dancer. But when I look at dance and when I'm watching dance, I feel that in my body.
Right.
Like I have an emotional reaction to that art form.
Yeah.
And I think that's the power of art. Right? Is that these aren't humans that are just showing you what they're good at. Right? These are humans that are creating a living way of communicating with you, a living way of expressing the things that are hard for us to say, or that aren't necessarily hard for us to say, but that we don't really have a way of saying.
Right. When you, let's see, so owning the art, meaning here I am, this is what is coming out of me at the moment, and here it is.
Yeah.
Being able to own it regardless of what other people think. Okay, so maybe that's held me back more in my life than I ever realized until the last year, that there's so much creativity stored in these deep bottomless pits, it seems like, of me, and that I was in a way my own worst critic, and potentially afraid or worried about what the world might think. And it's all just in my imagination. There's something about what you were saying that just I don't know, everything about, oh, this artist must think they're great, and I've never had that thought cross my mind either, but it's a possibility.
I think I think what you just said about, someone might be too critical and that's just in my imagination. I don't think it is. Like, I think people are really critical, like hella critical, and I make weird stuff. Like my art is not enjoyed by everyone.
Sure,
and
sure.
I think at the time, this was a really hard thing to hear, but it's really helped me throughout the years as an artist. I remember being in art school and I was in a painting class, and painting is not my strong suit. And I was having a critique with my professor, and she was looking at the portfolio of my paintings and criticizing everyone and not saying a positive thing about any of the pieces. And every time she would critique one piece, it was negative, and I would just sink and sink and sink. And finally at the end I said, God, do you have anything positive to say about the work?
Yeah.
And she looked at me and she said, Enzina, if you want to be an artist, you're going to have a thick skin.
Okay.
And I thought, well, I'm never going to be able to be an artist because I'm too sensitive and I'm not going to be able to handle this type of criticism. And I've had a lot of criticism about my work.
Okay.
You know, I've had people to my face not realize that I was the artist
Oh my.
and speak negatively.
Oh my.
Like, what the hell is this stuff? I don't get it. What kind of work is this? To my face, because they didn't know it was mine. And I've been able to just, think about that in a different way. Like, and recognize that my work is not for everybody.
It's not.
You know?
Yeah, it's
and
not.
some of it's kind of weird and
Sure.
hard to understand. But I also feel like those moments are really great when that person is open to engage in a conversation, when it's less negative and hurtful, because I've had that too.
Okay.
I've had individuals respond to my work in ways that is pointed and hurtful and degrading of who I am as a person. But when the conversation is like, I don't get that, anybody could do that, or but they're open to have a conversation about why they don't get it. I love those moments because it gives me an opportunity to talk about the impact of art and to talk about the power of art. And art isn't universally beloved. Art is by nature subjective and can be controversial in the way that two people are going to look at something and have wildly different reactions and experiences because of what they bring to that story, of what their background is. But being able to have that conversation, I think, is really fun. You know? I kind of love it when people are like, I don't get it.
That's
and then
awesome.
I'm like, let me tell you about it. Yeah.
That's cool. What is art then?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
As you say that, I'm thinking so many things about art and subjectivity. And, that there's art even in the way we construct a sentence. It's all about portraying the feeling, right?
Yeah.
In whatever way we do that.
Absolutely. I think I remember being in an aesthetics course, like the philosophy of art, and the big question is, what is art? And I think philosophers and critics over time developed a list of all of the qualities that would need to exist for something to be art.
Okay.
It's like, and then what's craft? Is craft art? Like, where do we draw the line?
Right.
And I feel like we're having less of those conversations now because of how accessible creativity is. I don't know. I think there are so many things that can be done artistically or thoughtfully or creatively that I think that conversation, I don't know. I mean, what isn't art, really?
What isn't? Yeah.
I think you could get into the weeds about what makes something fine art and what makes something craft and what makes something novice, but I don't know.
That kind of reminds me of going back to the nature of judgment.
Yeah.
We can be so busy trying to divide the lines between everything instead of just taking a deep breath and enjoying what's happening in the world. And what's happening amongst us and between us. And,
because you could get into the weeds with like, is this art or is this commercial or is this craft or is this design? Like what?
Right.
I just, it is what it is, and let's appreciate rather than trying to, I don't know, label.
File and label. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all art, right? It's all art, and it's all not art.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Of relation.
Yeah.
So it's on YouTube.
Yes.
Of relation.
Yes.
And I was searching yesterday, and I asked you to send me the link because for some reason I couldn't find it. So is it public on YouTube or?
I think so. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'll ask the videographer if it is.
Okay.
I thought it was, but you can't really search for it.
Is that a fact?
I think so. I've tried searching for it too.
Okay.
So maybe it's not public.
Okay. Is it okay for me to put a link to it in the description?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of relation was amazing. What an amazing. What are you calling it? Is it a short
performance?
A short video performance, or
it's a video of the performance.
Okay.
So the work is intended to be live.
Gotcha.
And experienced, and the video is just the documentation of that live performance.
Okay. And how many were there? 3 different?
There were 3 different pieces, so 3 vignettes in the live performance.
Okay.
And each one addressed the concept of relationship in a different way. And so the first was a presentation of the relationship to the self.
Okay.
The second was familial relationship, and the third was romantic relationship.
Okay. It was amazing.
Oh, thank you.
And I
Thank you.
was wanting to watch it again before our talk today, and I didn't get a chance to. But I can still see certain parts and scenes that just meant so much to me.
Oh, thank you.
And there's not enough time to unpack all of the things that are there. But thank you for Of Relation.
Yeah.
I mean.
Well,
and the actors and the actresses and everyone who took part in that. It was amazing.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about Of Relation for those who are watching or listening?
I think about it, and I did one part, the relationship part. I interviewed several people on relationship and what it means, and the push and pull, and the give and take, and the tension, and the good times, the bad times. And part of it was selfish, right? Because it's me trying to understand this stuff, trying to understand how love works, trying to understand how relationships work. What is this experience? What does this mean? And in interviewing people and asking them the questions, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm collecting the answers, right? So in that way, it's kind of selfish. But man, listening to people's stories, it's just so amazing.
This is life-changing.
And people were so open and vulnerable.
Very.
And I have hours of these stories, these precious stories from people. And I can only use sound bites.
Right.
And I want to do more to honor those stories and those experiences in some way. But I feel a lot of it, the whole show was this investigation. What does it mean to be connected to yourself, and the process of growth and development, and the progress we make, and then the retrogression that happens naturally, right? What does that mean? And what does it look like to just sit with yourself in silence and just have to listen? And, it's painful, it's monotonous.
Right.
And, when is it going to end? Is it ever going to end? And then in the familial sense, what happens in our units, in our family units, and then how that shapes us as we move forward in life.
Right.
I think that is something that I know I'll constantly be investigating. And
for sure.
I think we
I
all,
totally agree with that.
we all do in some capacity. This
yeah.
is like our earliest sense of self comes from our family or lack of family bonds,
right.
And then the romantic connections, like, ugh.
Right.
That is just like, I mean, so unexplainable.
Yeah.
And so
I was going to
driven
say
by
mind-boggling.
Mind-boggling, right? And so driven by those first two relationships, I
Right.
think. And that was important for me to stage it that way, right? To have the viewers walk through each stage.
In that order. Okay.
Right, because I feel like it begins with the self, right? This is our earliest sense of self, begins with ourself, and then is shaped by how we age and how we react and respond to our familial situation or lack thereof. And then that all ties into how we relate to other people. And then how we relate to other people in an intimate, romantic way is so much different than how we relate to someone in a like non-romantic, intimate connection. And it all is the stuff that has happened before. And all the romantic relations that has happened before. It all shapes how we connect or disconnect.
Right.
And I think for me, it's an effort in like trying to understand all that.
Right.
And hearing other people's stories helps me understand it a little bit more, even though it's still bizarre.
Right. It is bizarre.
And I think what was interesting to me was, I interviewed people on separate days. I think maybe a couple times I interviewed people like back to back. But what was interesting is I would hear one person's story and how they reacted and responded. And then I would hear another story of the complete opposite reaction.
Right.
Like the positive and negative side. And it just really demonstrated to me that we are all experiencing our own planets.
Right.
And sometimes they mesh up, and sometimes they're on complete different platforms. So we,
I don't.
One of
That's
the
so real.
one of the interviewees. Oh gosh, so much of. Sometimes I'll just replay their interviews because they're just so beautiful in my head, And one of the interviews or sound bites that really still gets me is, this man was talking about this relationship that was really strong and then just started to fade. And he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he said, like, when does it change? Like, when do two people get on different trains and start going in opposite directions? Or not even opposite directions, but they just miss each other. Like, there's just this time when you felt so connected, so in sync with someone, and then something happens and you just miss them. You just miss each other.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
Like that is so like gut-wrenching,
right.
And I think we've all had that experience where something was so great and something was, you felt deeply connected, and then you just miss them, and they miss you.
Right.
And you stop talking directly to each other. You're talking past each other.
Yeah. Almost like the words are just floating in the air or something, and they're not being caught,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all an investigation for me, I think.
Communication, there's a lot of communication in art.
Absolutely.
Right? I mean,
I think it's all communication.
It's all communication.
I don't think that everyone would agree with that, or all artists would agree with that. But, I also feel like all art is in some way a self-portrait, or all art is telling a story.
Right.
But I don't think that's my opinion.
Right.
It's my opinion. But I've known artists that have made art and, when you ask them, what do you mean? What is this trying to say? They're like, oh, it just looks nice. It's just a good balance of color. It's just a good balance of shape and form.
Right.
And I'm like, oh.
And that's okay too, right?
Yeah.
If that's their journey,
yeah.
where they're at. Because perhaps I would have said something similar earlier on in my journey.
Yeah.
But now, knowing that, again, how I choose to portray the idea is the art in and of itself, meaning the way I put the sentence together, even the way I tell the story in my mind is a creative action.
Yeah. Agreed.
But not everyone's having that experience, or not everyone is aware that they are having that experience.
And I think for me, maybe the reason why I think that, like why I think all art is communicating something, is because I react more strongly to artwork that I feel is communicating something. Okay. And for me, if it's a technically expertly executed artwork, I can appreciate that. I can appreciate the skill that went into this hyper realistic painting or drawing. But if it's not expressing something, if there isn't a story that's being told, I like it less.
Sure.
Like, I'm drawn to it less than something that I feel is communicating something. And it doesn't,
That's amazing.
Even like a weird abstract painting that is just shape and form and color and texture, like I will see something in that that's like telling me a story and that is communicating something, and I'm so drawn to it. But then if the artist is like, oh, I just wanted to put those pieces together because they look nice together, I feel like I would be like, oh, I like it less now.
Sure. You know, that makes me think, the first time I saw the movie The Matrix in, I think it was 96 or 97 is when it came out. I had no clue what that movie was about. Yeah. But I remember enjoying the fight scenes and then but leaving going, what was that about? Yeah. There's a lot of things being communicated in that movie, but I wasn't in a place to understand or perceive the message that was there. And then maybe a year or two later, I watched it again and was blown away. I was like, and to this day, it is my favorite movie of all time.
That's awesome.
And so hearing you say that is again, the communication piece, how we miss each other, and maybe the message is being sent, but I'm just not ready to receive that message right now.
Or I don't have the background to critically analyze it in that way, you know? I mean, I remember I've had so many experiences with art, not my own, I mean with my own, but other art, that people would be like, I don't like it, I don't get it. And then I would explain the artist's intent and what their concept was and what they, you know, wanted to say or what they were trying to present. And they're like, I dislike it less, you know? Okay.
I dislike it less.
Like, okay, it makes more sense
makes
now.
More sense,
but I think as humans, right, when we don't understand something, when something doesn't make sense to us, I feel like less common are we going to say, I want to unpack that. I'm going to investigate that. Right. But I think more so, our reaction when we don't understand something or something doesn't make sense is just to write it off. Right. And say, ugh, I don't get it.
You know, in my personal experience, that is the unhealthy Lance showing up in that moment. And to be able to own every single day, you know what? I don't know half as much as I think I know.
Oh my gosh,
and and the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. And so the curiosity keeps being fueled in this way. And I love that. I love that journey now. Whereas before, if someone presented an idea that I had no clue about, it would I almost would stop breathing. Like, wait, what are you saying? Please just leave it alone, or let's not go there type of thing, which is just my own insecurity, right? It's not that they're saying anything bad, or it may be a genius idea, actually, you know? Yeah. But my own immaturity, I guess you could say. Yeah. What a journey all of this is.
I know.
I want to invite you to come back and talk again, because Of Relation is still, there's just so much about of relation, and there's so much about self-discovery and self-identity that I would love more opportunity to unpack
love that.
with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
That'd
you.
be great. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. Well, the rest of this is being edited out, so don't worry about anything. Thank you so much.
Oh,
that
it's
was
my
fantastic.
pleasure. Thank
you were like so natural and just like right at home, which was great. I was just like loving every second.
Awesome. Awesome.
I'm working on this manual that's called the identity process. And I am trying to see if I can coordinate a small group of people to help me tidy it up, essentially. It's a very small piece of work.
Yeah.
In my mind, anyway. It's not like a full-length book. And you kept saying so much about the self, and there's so much in my own heart about that I'm writing about. So the identity process has helped me get to this point of owning so much of who I am. And it feels very good. It feels very healthy. It feels very complete. It's fueling the way I make decisions. You know, it's fueling the way I show up everywhere all the time. Who do I want to be in these situations, knowing who I am already? And I would love to have your voice be a part of it if you're willing, one, two, available, because it seems like your world is, I think I'm sensing like you have a lot going on. So, and to get the number of people that I would, which is not a huge number, it's like 5 or 6 people, but in the same space, ready to engage in the same thing, with helping me just complete this manual that my idea is to work through as a team, and then kind of get that last, like, this is ready to be released, you know, and it's something that I plan to give away.
Oh, cool.
It's an identity manual, which the more people I talk to lately, well, more specifically, I've had a lot of people say, Lance, I don't know what I'm doing or what I'm up to. I don't know who I am. And it brings me to tears, honestly, because there's been some people I really care about, and they're like, I don't know who I am. And it just like, my heart just sinks. And I feel very fortunate to have started this manual for me. It was for me. It's like, Lance, you got to figure out what you're up to here.
Right.
Who are you? Right. And the questions just boom, 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 and going through it and working through it. And it was quite a process, and it was myself leading me through it. So it took me a good long while. But I feel like I can facilitate it in a way that will help people kind of jump ahead all the hurdles I had to get through. Anyway, so
that's
there's
awesome. I'd be super interested.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a lot of respect for you. I think you're a fantastic woman in the world.
Thank you.
So thank you for just being yourself.
Thank you so much.
And you always are. You always are just like so genuine and so just like chill, and always just like have a feeling of like, okay, like being around Enzina is just like a breath of fresh air. Just like wonderful.
That's so kind. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
How
are the holidays looking for you?
I'm gonna go to Chicago to visit my folks.